on, everybody? This time I'll make sure that I introduce myself. So my name is Israel, and I really appreciate I really appreciate you guys for checking my video out of this podcast, however you are viewing or listening. So I'm going to talk about the time, kind of tell the story about the time where I came home and found my mother dead at the age of 12. Not really sure how exactly to start this story, where to begin, but let's just say, it was a very life-changing experience. That day has really changed the trajectory of my life forever. My life has never been the same, and it's been 20 years now. But let's go ahead and get started. So I didn't grow up with a silver spoon, I didn't grow up in the best neighborhoods. I was what you call urban youth. And what do urban youth do when they go to school? They have to complete food. That's what we did. We acted the food. So that day was like, it wasn't like any other day. Just went to school. I was in middle school. Went to school. Had a good time. I don't know if I got into a fight that day. I used to have a fight every day. I don't think I got into a fight that day. I don't think I got into a fight that day. I think I was just acting the food, class clown, making everybody laugh, the normal stupidity, my normal childhood stupidness. I remember being in my English class, and I think that was my last. Either it was my last class of the day, or it was my next to the last class of the day. But thinking back, that day did seem kind of strange. It did kind of have a strange feeling to it, but I never thought what happened to me would actually happen to me. But like I said, I'm in school, I'm in the class, acting the food, and fast forward school in, which is my favorite part of the day, because I'm ready to go home and give me something to eat. School food, blah. School food was not good. So, got in the school bus, got home, opened the door, and, we were living with my grandma at the time. My mom was trying to, get back on her feet and stuff. My parents had separated and stuff at that point, so your mom, we were staying with my grandma, and we were all, my grandma had a basement, and the basement had like its own living quarters. So it was me, it was my mom, and it was my sister. We all slept down there. I had a bunk bed, so my sister and I, we slept on the bunk bed, and my mother, she had her bed. So that's how we survived at that point. So I came home, and my grandma had a walkout basement. So you come in, you just walk down the step and open the door and go in the house. So that's what I did. Came home, walked down the steps, opened the door, and went in. And for a second, I thought that I saw my mother in the chair, and for a second I thought that she was just asleep. So I was like, hey, wake up. Hey, I'm home, how you doing, But, and I tried it, for like a couple seconds, and I started to realize that something was wrong. Like, I looked at her mouth, and I seen her tongue was like bone dry. I'm like, bone dry? She laying back and her eyes closed. I said, my mother's dead. I said, this can't be though. And then I looked, down the chair, like dried up blood and stuff. So I went upstairs, and I think I got my cousin. And, she came down, saw it, and she was hysterical and everything. And she went and got her mom, and her mama came down the steps. And then, mama called 911 and all that stuff. And then, next thing you know, it was a whole scene. What really traumatized me in the beginning, I thought that my mother was murdered. like I said, I seen, you know, a little blood inside the chair, and my dad was there the day that she died. He was there. So let me backtrack. I called him when I seen her body. I called. I said, "Hey man, what did you do?" I said, "My mom was sitting here dead looking. What did you do?" And you know, he was frantic and all that stuff and all that jazz. I ended up, you know, hanging up on him. So like I said, it was a huge scene, man. It was everybody in the neighborhood coming over. You know, people I went to school with coming over. You know, and it's crazy how quick a rumor can start. 'Cause people was already walking up to me, you know, telling me they sorry my mom was murdered and all this stuff. And it was just amazing to me. So I'm like, it hadn't even been like 4 hours, and people already coming up to me telling me they sorry my mom being murdered. It was on the news and everything, you know. But that was very traumatizing, you know. I remember after the firemen, you know, pronounced her dead on the scene. I remember they had her on the floor trying to, you know, resuscitate her and everything. And when they were done, they left her, you know, and that's when I guess the coroner come to get your body and stuff. So they left her on the floor. So I remember laying down beside her on the floor and wrapping her right arm around me. And I remember I told her goodbye. I knew that was the last hug that I would ever get from my mother. I wrapped her arm around me. I told her goodbye. And then, you know, I went up the steps and I went outside and, you know, I went up the steps. And that's when a cop met me. I never forget. It was a female cop. And her choice words were, she definitely should have used a different choice of words. But I remember she told me that my mother had expired. And I remember, you know, thinking like, dang, you couldn't break the news to me a little softer. She's expired. You could say, you know, she's passed. She's gone. You know, something like that. I'm like, lady, you such a cop that you need some sensitivity training. But you know, the cop did, you know, hold me and give me a hug. So you know, she was sweet and she did care. After that, yeah, like I said, it was a whole scene outside. Like the whole neighborhood, you know, came out there. You know, family members showing up, screaming and hollering, and I'm just looking. You know, my sister was in elementary school, so eventually, I don't remember if somebody went and got my sister from school, or if somebody just got her off the bus. But I remember one of my cousins holding my sister. My sister was 8 years old at the time. And I remember my cousin holding my sister, and you know, and I was just looking at her like, man, it's nothing I could do to mend your 8-year-old broken heart. I remember looking at her and thinking that. And it was an awful day, because prior to that, not too long before that, which I'll get into this with another podcast, but I had actually almost caught my first felony case, you know, and I was scared too, because that boy could have actually died. I could have been facing either murder charges or manslaughter charges, but like I said, that's a whole another episode. But that's what made what happened so much worse. We were just getting over that hurdle, and then, you know, this happens. So that day was just awful, and I remember not being able to sleep that night. No matter how hard I tried, I just could not sleep, because I couldn't believe that, you know, all kids, I think all kids think like this, or I think a lot of people think like this, people pass away. I just couldn't believe that she left me in this world all by myself. During this time, you know, my father was a severe alcoholic. And he actually showed up on the scene too, all drunk up and stuff. And he got arrested for murder. And of course he was cleared, by the way, because it turns out my mother died from natural causes. She wasn't murdered. But so it was just so crazy how everything went down. Like I said, during that time, it was months before he was cleared of murder, because they gotta do autopsy on the body. They got to get the results and stuff, and depends on where that body is on the law. It could take months to get the results. So during that time, I was thinking like, man, my dad killed my mama. That was just awful. A lot of the stuff was going through my mind, and I just, for a long time, I just couldn't sleep. Like, I would fall where I fell, but I couldn't just be like, hey, I'm gonna lay down an hour and I'm gonna go to sleep. It's like sleep was so hard to find. It's like wherever I look for sleep, I just couldn't find it. Well, like I said, months down the line, my dad was cleared of murder and everything, which I'm glad of. It's nice to know that, my mother wasn't murdered, especially by my dad, So that made me feel a little bit better. But let me go back to the funeral. I don't skip the all past funeral. So the funeral was really something. I mean, I remember going to a classmate's mom's funeral, because his mom, man, she died a hero. I might talk about that in another podcast, but his mother died a hero. She died protecting her daughter. It was so sad, but a mother will always protect her babies. But I remember being at his mother's funeral, and I was like, man, I can't imagine what that's like. Like, looking at his face. His face was just blank as a brand new check. It was just so blank. Like, you could see the pain in his eyes. I mean, the pain was oozing out of his eyes. And next thing I know, I was experiencing that same pain. And I just can't describe what it was like to see my mother laying in that casket. It was petrifying, traumatizing. It was. And then my grandma, God rest her soul, had a nerve, to tell me to, kiss on her cheek. So I kissed her on her cheek, and I remember that the feel of her skin, it wasn't the same, because, the blood and everything was gone. Then the smell of, embalming fluid, it was just so traumatizing. So, like, through the years, I tried to, I would say this, I really wish that my family really got me the therapy that I needed. Because even to this day, I have not been able to properly process that. I'm about to get some more therapy, and I believe I will. But that made me just so, and I know my wife can tell you, just made me so extra protective. Like, even to this day, like, my wife would be asleep, and if I go in the room, use the bathroom, I don't like using her bathroom. Her bathroom's nice and clean, but I prefer my bathroom, my king's bathroom. But so I would, walk through the master bedroom to get to my bathroom, and sometimes I couldn't hear her breathe. Sometimes I would literally stand there for like a minute just to make sure that she's breathing. And, over time, I start to realize, like, dude, you doing this because you found your mother dead. Like, it was that traumatizing. Like, it made me, like, smother my wife. Didn't mean to, but because I'm so traumatized, and this is stuff that I thought that I was past. I thought I made it over that hurdle, but I am still traumatized from that. So I encourage, people, especially black people, we don't like to go to counseling. We'll say Jesus is our counselor. We don't need counseling. God got us and all that. Man, stop being stupid. You being dumb. You need to go to counseling and get you some help. Oh, my camera about to die. Took a charge of battery last night. Because I'm about to cut this video short. But I'm about to make a part 2. But go get some counseling, y'all. It's very important. Especially y'all black folk. Get some counseling.